Okay, this is the first video for this year, and we're starting with adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing integers. Um, we've been talking about integers the last couple days. We've reviewed what you guys learned last year in sixth grade, and so now we're going to go on and do the operations. So we'll start with adding. We're going to take this very slowly, um, one small thing at a time, and as you can see, we're starting out with is a really basic problem, but there's an important reason we're going to start out with this problem. Obviously, everybody knows that 3 plus 5 is 8. That's not what's important here. Okay, and what's important is I wanted to show you guys how we could think of this on a number line. Because as we start putting negatives into these problems, both adding and subtracting, people get confused. But if you can go back to a number line and always be able to think of it on a number line and moving across the number line, it's going to make it much easier for you. So when we have a problem like 3 plus 5, what that really means is we always start at 0. So when we start with the number 3, that's really saying, okay, I'm over to here. I'm over to 3. That's how far I've gone so far. And if I'm adding 5 to that, that means I'm going another 5 from where I stopped there at the 3. I'm going over another 5. And wherever that ends, that's my answer. And you're going to see, like I said, obviously this is a very easy problem. And we really don't need to do that. But I want to show you what it looks like using the arrows. So when we get to the more difficult ones, it's going to make it much easier for you. Okay, so just remember you can always go back to a number line and just look at it, actually move along the number line, count along, or draw arrows along so you can see where you should end up. Okay, until there's going to be specific rules that we're going to learn on how to add and subtract, multiply and divide positives and negatives. But until you have those rules down and you really know them, this is an easy way to make sure you're getting the correct answer. So if we're doing one like 28 plus 7, okay? This is obviously a short number line. We're not going to start at 0. Let's just say that this was 28, okay? So our first number is 28. That's where the arrow's coming out to 28. Then I'm going to add 7 to that, so I'm going to go over 7 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this is where I'm going to end up at. And if we count that out, we should know that that should end up at 35. And of course it does. That's the answer to 28 plus 7. Again, easy problem, but I want you to see how you can quickly make a number line and draw arrows, count along the number line to make sure you're getting the right answer. Now, we look at one like this, 8 plus 0. Well, that makes it a little bit different. So I'm starting out at 8, so I'm coming out to here. If I add 0, then I'm not moving anywhere. I'm not going any further. So in other words, I'm staying right here. So obviously, and everybody knew this, the answer is 8. Okay? But it shows us something very important that we need to remember, and you knew this before, we need to remember it when we're talking about positives and negatives as well. Any number plus 0 equals that number that you started with. 8 plus 0 is 8. We can write that using algebra like this. A plus 0 equals A. A can be any number. Okay? And it doesn't matter. It could be a positive number. It could be a negative number, fraction, decimal. It doesn't matter. You can start with any number you want. If you add 0 to it, it's just that number. Okay? Very simple. And so if we look over, actually pause the video real quick. And when you come back, I'll fill in these answers. It should only take you a second. You can see what these are. But do these problems real quick and then play the video again, and I'll give you the answers. Okay, so the first one, of course, should just be negative 11. The second one should be 364. And the third one, now I want to show you one thing here. Some people wonder, well, why do we even have parentheses on this? Usually we put parentheses if there's like an operation, if there's two things added, subtracted, something like that inside. Well, we don't have that. So why do we need parentheses here? And it's really just simply because we have an addition sign and then we have a negative. And it's just so that those signs get separated. So there's no way to miss the fact that there's a addition and a negative. It's two separate signs. That's the only reason we have the parentheses. So 0 plus negative 241 is just going to be negative 241. So hopefully we got all those. Those should be very easy. Like I said, we're going to go really slow at the beginning because we want to make sure everybody gets all of these rules down and doesn't get them confused with each other. All right, negative 4 plus 4. Take a guess what you think that's going to end up being. You probably already know. But if we think about it, again, go back to your number line. Now we're starting down in the negative. So the arrow is actually going to go to the left here. We're starting down at negative 4, but then I'm adding 4. And when I add, I move to the right. So if I'm starting here and I add 4, that's going to take me right back to 0. I go a negative 4, I go to the left 4, and then I add 4, I go to the right 4. Obviously, those are just going to cancel each other out, and so I end up with 0. Okay? And we go to the next one here. We have 6 plus a negative 6. Basically, same idea. Now we're starting with the positive, so I'm going to the right, 6. But now I'm adding, say usually means go right, but I'm adding a negative number. And when I add a negative, remember we've always said that negatives are like the opposites. So we do the opposite when we're adding a negative. When we add a positive, we go to the right. So when we add a negative, we're going to go to the left. Okay? So I'm going to go to the left 6 places. And again, I end up right back at 0. And so all this shows us is it doesn't matter if I go to the negative first or if I go to the positive first. If I add a number and its opposite, so a positive 6, a negative 6, a negative 4, a positive 4, anytime I add a number and its opposite, I will always get 0. And so we're going to write that down. The sum of a number and its opposite will always be 0. Okay? And again, we can write that in algebra with letters, usually variables, so stand for any number. If you have a number and you add its opposite, this is the way we show the opposite of a number. We put a negative in front of it. So any number and its opposite gives you 0. Okay? And you can certainly change the order there. You could have the negative a plus positive a, and certainly that's going to give us 0 as well. And so that's actually it for today. The 3 big things you need to remember are 1, just the fact that you can show addition, subtraction problems through the use of a number line, counting along a number line, moving an arrow along a number line. That's a very easy way to make sure you're doing your adding and subtracting right until you have all the rules down. The second big thing, anytime you add 0, it's going to be the other number. No matter if it's positive, negative, the 0 is first, the 0 is second. Doesn't matter. If you add a 0 to anything, you end up with that number. And then the third thing is when you add a number and its opposite, you're always going to get 0. Again, doesn't matter which one comes first because on the number line, they're working against each other. They're going in opposite directions. And so if I go in opposite directions the exact same amount, I basically go nowhere. I end right up back at 0. Those are the 3 big things you need to remember from today. We'll work on this stuff in class tomorrow, and then we're going to go on and start adding 2 negatives next.